In 3 days, I'm going to be at Tfcon Los Angeles on Saturday the 9th of March. Not as a guest or anything, just a regular convention goer. If you want to find me on the floor, I will be wearing this combo of shirts from the Prime review. Though, maybe a jacket too, depending on the weather. I hope to see at least a few of you there, and sorry that these announcements have been so late notice. I only decided I was going last Friday. Anyways, let's cover some small boys. It's Transformers Legacy United, Blue Galvatron, and Snarl. Yes, I'm calling this Blue Galvatron, because it's Galvatron and not Megatron in any way, shape, or form. It's Galvatron's body, with his crown, in blue, green, black, and gray. And the black and gray aren't even in the correct sequence to be part of Megatron's color scheme. I don't care that the purple version of this is just a powered-up Megatron called Galvatron. That's stupid! It's the same dude as ever, just in purple. And that dude who is now in purple was always Galvatron in this show. And all this is pointless to talk about because how good is the toy? Man, it has been a while since I just ranted about some completely inconsequential bullshit like that, hasn't it? Anyways, toy! Is it good? It's got some good points. I mean, for starters, if you just want a mini Galvatron, you can either repaint this purple, or just wait for them to inevitably re-release this in those colors. And once they do, you just rip off all the crap he's wearing. And bing bong boom! He's a pocket Galvatron who can't transform! There may be a flaw in my plan here. Is it accurate to the thing that it's supposed to be, that appeals to 0% of you because it's a version of the character from a show that no one likes? Yes, it's accurate to that. But that also entails just one hell of a backpack. It's far from the worst looking one in the universe, but it's most of the size of him. Though at least it doesn't make him want to topple over. Honestly, the whole thing feels pretty nicely built, and it does look at least a little bit cool. Its problems are not in its design. So long as you leave the shoulder cannons off and also the accessory, because, let's be real, that's just a tank farting out a sword strapped to his arm. If those parts are there, then the problem is absolutely in the design, but also in other places too. But before we get to those, let's talk about Beast Wars Snarl. Why do I call him that? Because I had this toy as a kid, and that's who this is to me. And I will say that despite the faux-forming jaw, we are already doing better in my books. It's actually a good bit bigger than the Blue Galvatron, and the back kibble, while pretty bad, is far less egregious. I don't exactly like the way the gun mounts, given that it's on the underside of his wrist, and is more of a handgun than a cannon, but at the same time, I also find it deeply charming. That is so the classic Beast Wars way of doing things. What's hilarious to me about this guy is just how much this feels like one of the OG Beast Wars toys. Aside from the faux-forming chest, which they just weren't really doing back then because they still had taste, this just screams one of those old figures, what with a ball joint construction and simple design. It also poses just like one of those old things, though the tolerances on the ball joints are infinitely better now. This is rock solid and the movement is creamy and sturdy. This 100% just feels like a modern update of an old toy that I loved so much. When it was revealed, I really did not think I was going to like this as much as I do. I thought it was going to be kind of lame, possibly just because it's technically a version of the Tasmanian Kid, which has got to be one of the worst names in the whole franchise. But then I got it in hand and it just took me back to my childhood, while also just being really good. Though, I mean, we're talking about Beast Wars figures here. They were kind of the best we got for toys for a very long time. So it's pretty easy to do that to me while also being good. It's working from an excellent template. The head on Blue Galvatron is pretty good. It's kind of small, but they did manage to pack a lot of detail onto there. It's frowny and angry, and it captures the spirit really well. It's a good, teeny tiny head sculpt, but I'm finding that I don't have a lot to say because I just don't have a lot of passion for this particular design. It's Galvatron if Galvatron had worse colors and was from a show that I've both not watched and that people tell me to actively avoid because of how bad it is. So it's just a decently designed little dude to me who looks like a character I actually like in worse colors. As for Snarl, this is the one aspect of this figure that I'm not really here for. It looks enough like the original toy that if I squint, I can say that it works, but it's also different enough that it's pretty clear that this is trying to be the Tasmanian Kid rather than the Beast Wars figure, what with the big floppy ears and more Sentai-esque face. I need to stress again that I don't dislike Japan. I love Japan. I love Sentai and Tokusatsu stuff. I just don't like the way that stuff combines with the Transformers. It doesn't work for me, so every time I look at this head, there's just a mild feeling of incompleteness to my eye. But I assume most of you aren't going to have my subjective hangups. And for those of you who are sane, unlike me, this is a good head that I can't objectively fault. Though, if you want this to be Snarl like I do, it's a bit off for that. So the look of Blue Galvatron is fine if you are like me and the character doesn't matter to you. And it's probably good if you're one of the few people who actually care about this version of Megatron. It's pretty good quality for a Legends figure, though there are some stupid things about it, but at least it feels good and looks pretty solid. As for Beast Wars Snarl, with the exception of the head and the faux-forming chest, I'm thrilled with it. It looks great, it feels great, it's almost exactly like something they would have done back in the 90s, just in better quality. Again, I didn't think I would like this anywhere near this much. As for accessories, Megatron has his insane arm tank sword gun hybrid thing. It's a fun idea, giving him another alt mode that he's been associated with before, so you can have a tiny version of that. But it just doesn't make sense as a weapon, and it looks awful when mounted on him. He's also got his shoulder cannons, and these two suck pretty hard. I actually like the dumb tank more than these, because when these are mounted properly, his pylons are way too tall. You actually have to parts form them to angle them down when I'm sure they're supposed to be on hinges, which would have probably been super easy to do, but when you do that, they look stupid. This is not the cool kind of shoulder-mounted weaponry. And they didn't even think to give him ports in the arms to make it so that he could Galvatron or Megatron it up. All you needed to do was make a hole, guys, and you couldn't even be trusted with that. As for Snarl, it's his tail weapon, and this really only appeals to me because I am reminded of weapons other figures from that era came with, like Gator Megatron or Iguanus. I have to say those two because it's very specifically not like the one he had. I have some fondness for this because of nostalgia for other toys. But if you don't, then I think that you'll mostly just find that it's the tail stuck in a really weird place on the robot mode that's only barely pretending to be a gun. So these aren't selling the figures. I at least appreciate the idea of the tank even if the execution leaves it wanting, and I'm fond of the tail gun, but that's just because of my childhood. But in the end, these do not sell the figures. As for articulation, Blue Galvatron is pretty bad. Head only swivels. Shoulders pull monstrously less than a 90, they get stuck on these pegs if you try to go forwards without using their barely out to the side joint, and if you have the shoulder cannons on, they are seriously impeded going forward. I haven't seen shoulders this bad since Masterpiece Grimlock, and these are probably worse. A little bit better than 90 elbows, no wrists, no waist, legs are unimpeded forward and to the side, but they have like no back, maximum knees, and feet with a tilt down. Snarl, on the other hand, is doing pretty good. Head has a tiny amount of side to side, a full rotation, and if you unpeg the backpack, a ton of up. Shoulders pull like an 89 and are otherwise unimpeded, elbows pull a bit more than a 90, wrist swivel, and some up and down for some stop in the name of the law action. Though it does kind of suck that they're stuck in that hand pose, holding things looks really awkward because of that. No waist, hips are unimpeded forwards and to the side, and a bit impeded going back, slightly better than 90 knees, and advanced feet with tons of tilt down, a smidge of up, a pivot, a rotation, and a heel tilt down. So Snarl moves like a classic Beast Wars figure. So basically better than stuff that was even coming out in Combiner Wars over 2 decades later. Blue Galvatron moves like ass. His knees are great, and that's the end of that statement. The foot tilt down doesn't really work because of the shapes of his calves, and the arms are a complete and total joke. They were so desperate to make the shoulders have the cannons on them, and it completely killed the articulation when there's no rightly cause for it. They could have just had the pegs for the cannons come in from the sides of the protrusions, which ironically would have let them rotate like they're supposed to rather than parts form. But instead, they just capped the tops of the shoulders, making it impossible for this to do what you want it to. As for transformation, Blue Galvatron is upsettingly simple, as well as overly complicated for the sake of complication. I don't mean that it's complicated, but they added the wings swiveling on the back just for the sake of doing it, that way they could claim an extra transformation step on the back of the box. It's boring, lame, it doesn't hold together, and the shoulder cannons fall off like every half second. Meanwhile, Snarl's transformation kind of rules. There is one single clashy aspect where you have to move the shoulders partially, then move the legs, then finish moving the shoulders. But outside of that, and the unfortunate parts forming, which I suppose you could just leave on in robot mode, even if it looks kind of bad and it would get in the way a little bit, but at least you wouldn't have to deal with it during transformation. But if I quit whinging about that for a second, it's just fun, interesting, and relatively intuitive. It's got that classic Beast Wars flavor to it. When I got this, I immediately transformed it like 12 times in a row because it was just that fun, and I could sit there all day treating it as my desk toy. Anyway, Blue Galvatron's alt mode is a thing. It kind of reminds me of a bird. It's a really awkward, unaerodynamic spaceship that doesn't even have the courtesy to look like a bebop when you flip it over like the original toy did. Meanwhile, Snarl is a pretty great looking little chipmunk. I don't know what this is. Amazingly, it's not a total brick. Mouth opens and closes a nightmarish amount. Front legs go forwards and backwards. Rear legs have a little motion. Digitigrade knees and feet with rotation and tilt. So this is absolutely stomping the core class rat trap from Kingdom into the dust. That thing couldn't do shit and couldn't hold together in robot mode. So ultimately, yeah, Blue Galvatron, let's see how many people in the comments I triggered by calling it that the whole video, just isn't good. It looks okay, and that's what it does. And if that's all you need, there it is. Otherwise, it's a figure with bad accessories that poses like ass, is way too simple in the transformation while also having steps added just for the sake of it, with an alt mode that I guess looks right if that's the thing that you want. For a transformer, it makes a good statue. Meanwhile, Snarl is the total package. A figure that looks really good in robot mode, has kind of a weak accessory, but poses pretty damn well, especially for the size class, but isn't even bad if you judge it by deluxe standards. Hell, it might even be better than average there. The transformation is very fun, the kind of thing that motivates you to flip back and forth while sitting at your desk just not thinking at all. The alt mode is great, looking better than other figures at its size class while actually having a strong level of posability, when its siblings have all the articulation of particularly stationary rocks, and it's cheap. The Snarl gets my full recommendation. You will love it. And there's no way that you will see yourself going wrong with the $10 you spend here. The Galvatron, you don't need. It's not offensive, but just, why would you buy it? And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.